This podcast contains adult language and stories of true crime. If you don't like laughing, crying, or being horrified at the actions of other humans, this podcast is not for you.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to part 1 of season 4, episode 25 of the series finale of this podcast.
God, you guys!
Oh my gosh.
It's not the very last
episode.
Oh, two sisters saying
right.
opposite things.
This is a episode.
Two sisters disagreeing.
It is, I mean, she's right. It is the last episode, and it's also not, because we'll have one more, but it's part of the same episode. If you're new here, you came on a weird time. But I'll tell you that this is the show where we rewatch, recap, and give you the latest updates to cases featured on the show Unsolved Mysteries. And I'm Eliza.
I'm Alison.
And I'm Karlin.
And I mean, if you're finding this show in the future and you started at this episode, that's fine. You have so many more episodes to listen to.
Who doesn't love a binge? I love a binge.
Love a binge. So welcome. Instagram user by Felicia92 suggested Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy. So that's who we are donating to this month and for next episode as well. For any reviews that we receive, we'll donate $1 to them.
We have mailbag, and we're not doing another listener short stack, so we gotta open that mailbag up.
Oh, that's so nice. Okay, who's this from?
Well, I also have a whole other box that's got some stuff in it for you guys that I didn't even tell you because it wasn't wrapped and I didn't want to spoil it.
Yeah, I love it. Love that.
Let's talk about this little tiny amazing package.
Yeah, adorable.
And it is written in ransom letters, which I
love it.
Big fan. And I want to... So this is the card before we open. Dear Alison, Karlin, and Eliza, hello, honeys. Inside are 3 small gifts that I created for each of you while listening to the podcast. It is truly my favorite thing to listen to while I'm crafting.
Ugh.
This is a hobby I learned from my mom, who makes beautiful pieces herself. After listening to an episode where you ladies lamented that there was never anything with your names on it, Widow Chapel magnets, I realized that I had the materials to make you each something personalized. Thank you for filling my ear holes with updates, banter, and nostalgia, and thank you for sharing your friendship with all of us listeners. Lots of love. Your friend, patron, and fellow cat lady, Michelle K.
Michelle. Okay.
So Michelle
is our legal advisor.
Right. Michelle is our current nonprofit legal advisor, and she works for private investigations for the missing.
Yes.
So this is from Michelle. And let's open it up. So let's see what it is. Oh my God, it's like a little beaded friendship bracelet. Oh, it's so nice.
What a cutie.
So you got something with your name on it, Karlin?
Yeah, it's actually me that never gets anything with my name.
Let me see.
Aw, that's so sweet, Michelle. Also, she's like the #1 Instagram comment queen. She always leaves us a funny comment, and it makes my day.
Michelle, that's so nice. I love mine. I love it.
All right, so we do have another package. So, dear true sweeties, thank you for such a great podcast. I look forward to listening every Monday. I wanted to make you something special to use, especially after drinking some of those libations your listeners have provided you. I've been enjoying my magnet. Keep up the great work, Paula. Paula sent us personalized water bottles.
A true sweetie.
And then the back is when you should be drinking your water.
Oh my God.
those.
12 p.m., 11 a.m., 10 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m.
We need it. We need it.
And they have our
Said,
name.
Stay hydrated, Queen. Oh, it says True Sweetie on it.
It says True Sweetie with a heart, and then it has each one of our names on it.
So nice.
Paula, you're right. I do need to hydrate more.
Absolutely.
And the
Thank
top,
you.
I don't know if you can tell, but the top is like this cool iridescent color.
I
at the bottom.
love.
And then really quick, we have a couple other stuff, but it's Christmas cards from a lot of our listeners, and it is just, I won't show you them all, but it's pictures of people with their families.
Oh my God.
And, Meredith and Chelsea, obviously, Michelle K. And so Stephen, Ashley, and Ava sent us a Christmas card. Ashley writes, I just want to let you know how much I love your podcast. I remember watching Unsolved Mysteries during dinner as a kid. I sat in front of our sliding glass door, and I always just knew the wanted bad guy was standing on our deck every time. I was always disappointed in the updates, so I was so thrilled to find your show. Thank you for being so dedicated to your research, even if it's a segment you don't enjoy. Thank you, Fawn. I love your hilarious commentary, and the show is truly something to brighten my Mondays. Side note, I'm sad I've caught up because now I can't listen all day.
Oh God.
I'm going to start to
hurts.
cry.
That one
Yeah,
hurts.
this is
There's one.
getting cards from some of our faves and like a gift from Michelle on the last episode is like too much for me.
It's a lot. I guess I shouldn't have done mailbag on the last episode.
I think it's nice.
Ashley says, keep up the amazing work. You are appreciated more than you may know. Enjoy the pictures of my family, dogs not included, and maybe you can take a summer trip to my wedding. No dick bitches invited. Love, Ashley.
Thank you, sweeties. All of you so much, and it was really nice to do a mailbag on our second to last episode,
Yeah.
but it's not even about the things you've given us. It's like physical things. You've given us so much support and love from afar, which we appreciate so much, but
Yeah.
all these little mementos, trust if you've ever sent us anything, we've saved every little thing. And the fruitcake, we ate it. So.
And we got really fucked up, Thomas. Thanks. And Thomas also sent us the peppermint patty recipe. I like Thomas. So Thomas hit me up because I'll be in New York this summer if you want to get
Me
weird.
too. I'm ready to hang out.
Oh, Leslie will be there as well. If you were to see the full recording podcast room in my home, it is fully bulletin board covered with cards and stickers and artwork, and just the walls have really beautiful stuff that you all have made us. So please.
And I have some of it here too,
Yeah.
because we started, quarantine recording separately.
Right.
And so I have some more stuff here.
Right. Okay. That being said, all of that, all the feels. The first segment is the investigators, and it's the death of Doug Johnston.
And a robbery about the Rochester Car Heist.
Okay, and then for part 2 of episode 25, I have a Lost Loves of Robert or Bobby Brown.
And then stop laughing because I have the unexplained death of Chaim Weiss.
Yeah.
It's not good, y'all.
It's
How
not.
else could it end for us?
Truly.
I mean, it's been a ride. All right.
All right,
Are you
let's
ready?
do it. I'm ready.
Stack begins by saying that on May 14th, 1990, in Phoenix, Arizona, Doug Johnston, a computer draftsman, was found slumped in the front seat of his car. He had been shot once behind his left ear from a distance of at least 12 inches. 13 years earlier, great. June 18th, 1977. This is obviously an Alison segment. The body of businessman Charles Morgan
Oh,
was found
yes.
in the Arizona desert, 40 miles southwest of Tucson.
Uh-huh.
If Charles Morgan sounds familiar, it's because I covered Charles Morgan in season 3, episode 9. But back then, he was Chuck Morgan. So I guess he deserves a little bit more formality at this point.
In death, postmortem formality.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I recognize that guy.
Yeah.
But he also looks very much like an actor that I can't think of the name of.
Okay.
So much.
Okay. But you remember when he was like, I went missing. Then he came back to his wife. And he's like, I can't talk.
I have the whole thing.
You have to redo the whole thing. Play season 3, episode 9.
Just listen to season 3, episode 9. I'm going to give you a Cliff Notes version. Okay. So, back then, in season 3, episode 9, when I was young and
vivacious, I was all like, oh, there's another theory, but I can't talk about it because it comes up again in UM eventually. Oh my God. Yes. That's exciting.
Well, sisters, welcome to Eventually. Here we are.
That's fun.
Okay, so you can go back and listen to our episode about Chuck Morgan, but this is the UM Wiki Cliff's Notes version. And I honestly, like Eliza with all of her segments, totally forgot who this person was.
Aw, welcome to my world.
I know. I was alarmed.
It's scary. It's a scary place to be.
I can't imagine recording a show and not knowing what you were talking about like a month later.
Remember how we make fun of amnesia? It's real.
It truly is. So 39-year-old Chuck Morgan was a successful businessman who was the president of his own escrow agency. He was also a potential witness in a state land fraud case involving a known crime boss in Phoenix, Arizona. On March 22nd, 1977, he left his Tucson, Arizona home to drive 2 of his daughters to school. After dropping them off, he vanished. 3 days later, he arrived back at his home. According to his wife, Ruth, he was missing a shoe. I think that's so funny. I don't know why. She's like, where was the shoe?
But that shoe, though.
Had a plastic handcuff around one ankle, had his hands tied together with a plastic zip tie. He could not speak, but with a pen and paper. Yeah, follow me because you're all going to remember this. He wrote down that he had been kidnapped and tortured. He also wrote that a hallucinogenic drug had been painted on his throat.
No.
Right. And he claimed that this drug would drive him insane or kill him if he ingested it. This is what this is when I was like, oh, yeah, right, this bitch. So for 1 week, Ruth nursed Chuck back to health by feeding him with an eyedropper. There you got it, Kaylee. Before his voice returned, he began to allude to his secret identity. He claimed that he had worked as an agent for the federal government and fought against organized crime. After his, quote, kidnapping, Chuck became justifiably paranoid. He began wearing a bulletproof vest. On June 7th, 2 months after his initial disappearance, Chuck vanished again. Shortly before his second disappearance, he told his father that if anything were to happen to him, there was a letter that he had written that would tell him who was responsible. The letter was never found. However, 9 days later, you guys are going to crack up about this too, when you remember, an unidentified woman called and said, quote, Chuck is all right. Ecclesiastics 12:1-8. Do you remember when I read y'all that Bible passage and you guys were like, that's not what that says?
Yeah.
I read you a full Bible passage.
Yes.
Okay. What the hell was I thinking? So this is a reference to a Bible passage. It's truncated here. Don't worry. If you go listen to season 3, episode 9, I read it for like 25 minutes. But in part, it reads, men are afraid of a high place and terrors on the road. Remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bull is crushed. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it.
Okay, I hate this so much.
Oh, my God.
So 2 days later, Chuck was found shot to death, despite the fact that he was wearing a bulletproof vest, perhaps Kevlar. His body was found in the desert 30 feet off the highway in the San Juan Springs area. He had been shot once in the back of the head with a bullet from his .357 Magnum, which was laying beside him. No fingerprints were found on the gun. Gunshot residue was found on his left hand, indicating that he had fired a weapon. In his car, police found a note that had directions to the crime scene written in his handwriting. Also found in the car were several weapons, ammunition, and a CB radio. Strangely, a piece of one of his teeth was found wrapped in a white handkerchief on the back seat. I don't remember that.
I don't either.
And that's almost like he would do that.
Right.
Himself.
Someone knock his tooth out and he
Right.
was like, I'll keep it for later.
That's
Why
weird.
would you do that? It's so weird. And then also a pair of sunglasses were found in the car that did not belong to him. Also, and you'll absolutely remember this, Chuck had clipped a $2 bill inside his underwear. Remember that?
What?
I don't remember that.
He is a weird guy. He's a weirdo. No, I don't remember any of this. The most I remember is him saying he had the stuff painted in his throat and all that.
Right. So written on the bill were 7 Spanish names from the letters A to G. Also, Ecclesiastes 12 was written with the verses 1 through 8 marked by arrows drawn on the bill's serial number. I'm going to repost all these photos because this is just bananas. So this was the same reference that the female caller had made to Ruth, his wife. So on the back of the bill, the signers of the Declaration of Independence were numbered 1 through 7. Also, a crude map was drawn which showed several roads between Tucson and the Mexican border. And the town Robles Junction and Sassabee were marked, and those towns were apparently known for smuggling. 2 days after Chuck's death, an anonymous woman spoke to an officer for the Pima County Sheriff's Department on the telephone. She claimed that he was supposed to meet her at a local motel shortly before he died. And she said that her nickname was Green Eyes.
Okay.
And that she was the same woman that had called Ruth and recited the Bible passage several days earlier. She also claimed that at the motel, Chuck showed her a briefcase containing several $1,000s in cash. He said that the money would buy him out of a gang contract that had been put out on his life. Surprisingly, despite the bizarre evidence, authorities ruled that Chuck had taken his own life. They believed that he did so either because of financial difficulties or fears for his safety. His family and a reporter named Don Devereaux believe that he was not murdered. Some investigators also suspect that his death was not a suicide. Shortly after Chuck's death, his impounded car was broken into while it was in police possession. Around that same time, his office was ransacked. 3 weeks after his death, 2 men claiming to be FBI agents arrived at the Morgan home. They told Ruth that they had to look through the house. They tore the house apart and searched. And it is unknown if they ever found what they were looking for or if they were even FBI agents.
Weird.
When Don Devereaux contacted the FBI, they claimed that they had never even heard of Chuck Morgan. Don Devereaux believed that Chuck Morgan was working with rogue members of the CIA and members of the Vietnamese government who were making money off of his escrow company, and they killed him for it. There you go. Let's go back to the segment.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. Your life is over. It's the last recording, and it's going to go until 4 o'clock in the morning. Stack says, 2 suspicious deaths with apparently no connection other than the authorities believe that both men committed suicide. But many disagree, especially in the death of Charles Morgan. Stack then says that Don Devereaux was a guest on the Chuck Morgan segment, and Don Devereaux is convinced that, like the death of Chuck Morgan, the death of Doug Johnston was not a suicide. He believes that both men were murdered and were targets of a contract hit. Now, in a dramatic twist, Don Devereaux has been warned that the bullet which killed Doug Johnston was meant for him. Stack then goes back and he tells you the story of Chuck Morgan. So I just put it at triple speed to wait to see who the hell Doug Johnston is because the segment is called Doug Johnston, yet we have not really talked about him.
Yep.
Okay. So then Stack, who is in a forest for some reason,
Sure.
because this takes place in Phoenix, Arizona. So Stack says that 3 months after the UN broadcast and 13 years after Chuck Morgan died, another unusual death occurred.
Here we
and
are.
then he says, right across the street from Don Devereaux's home in Phoenix, Arizona. May 14th, 1990 at 11 p.m., Doug Johnston left for work as usual. He was assigned to the night shift at a local computer graphics company. An hour later, Doug was found dead.
Sorry. Night shift computer graphics?
I know. A million follow-ups.
Okay, go ahead.
But I did look into it, and what he did was sort of like, what he got certified for was kind of a big deal at the time. And I'm sure the processing capacity of what he was working on did require like 24-hour
Sure,
shifts.
that's
so
fair.
it does
Okay.
make sense. But we think of like computer graphics, but this is in 1990.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
it's a big deal.
Okay.
So Stack then repeats that he had been shot once behind his left ear from a distance of at least 12 inches. Stack says at first it appeared to be a suicide, but oddly, Johnston was right-handed. No one is going to do that.
Nope.
The minute that happens, it is no longer a suicide. Can we
Always.
just...
I know.
Yeah.
Also, in non-suicide fashion, there was no gun at the scene.
Oh, a miracle.
And there was no powder residue on Johnston's hands.
God.
So I would say 1,000,000% not a suicide.
And yeah.
God,
Was
damn.
it truly ruled a suicide?
It initially was
Okay.
truly ruled a suicide because there was a man with a gunshot. Can you imagine? This is what it would look like.
No.
The way Doug Johntson, the bullet
But
hole.
truly,
Like,
how could you rule it that when there's no gun present at the scene?
right. It's like
Right next to the body. It would no.
nobody. Okay, so Detective Harvey Hamrick of the Phoenix Police Department says the only thing that was found was a .25 caliber bullet casing. The medical examiner determined it was just as likely that it could have been self-inflicted as it was as likely that another person had done it. Sorry, false. So, Hamrick says, based on that, they can't classify whether it was either a murder or a suicide, but it's being maintained in the homicide files at the police department. Denise Johnson, Doug's wife, says that Doug would have never taken his own life. He had just finished a year of computer-aided drafting and graduated with honors. He was on his way up, and when he graduated in March, after he graduated in March, he got a new job in April. She says that everything was great. They had a future, and there's no way that he would have taken his own life. Stack says that Don Devereaux followed the investigation with great interest. He lived across the street from the parking lot where Doug Johnston had been killed. Johnston's car was an, quote, aging Toyota station wagon, very much like Don Devereaux's. Don Devereaux says that he contacted the Phoenix PD a few days after the shooting and told them that he lived across the street and had a very similar car to Johnston, and that he was working on a homicide case and some other stuff that involved some substantial criminal activity. He says that the initial read he got was that the Phoenix PD didn't really think that had any bearing on the Johnston shooting. They're like, sure, Jan, this murder is totally about you. So law enforcement says thanks, but no thanks to Don Devereaux. And Devereaux says that he puts it out of his mind. And then a year later, he was contacted by a writer from Washington, D.C. named Danny Castellaro. Don Devereaux agreed to share the information that he had uncovered regarding Chuck Morgan's illegal gold transactions with Danny Castellaro. But before Don Devereaux could even nail his research, Dan Castellaro was dead.
Okay.
So I was like, sorry, but I have to look into the death of Danny Castellaro.
Yeah, you gotta.
Sorry, you guys, I'm so sorry. But it's the last one, so just do me a solid. Okay, so Stack says that Dan Casolaro was found in his hotel room with his wrists slashed deeply at least a dozen times.
Oh my God.
I know.
No.
Police, but what do you think? How do you think the police ruled the death?
Oh, suicide,
Oh my
of course,
fucking
honey.
God.
Of course.
A million is suicide. But to Don Devereaux and other people, you cannot possibly slash yourself 12 times.
No.
I mean, it's just...
Deeply. No.
No. Okay. So Don Devereaux and Casolaro's associates believe that he was murdered. Okay, so it's going to get real weird. I'm so sorry. It's literally called octopus, so just hang in.
What's called octopus?
What Casolaro called what he was like looking into.
Okay.
It does go, last episode, all the way to the top.
Oh my God.
So, Don Devereaux says that Casolaro's brother was a doctor and that Casolaro was so squeamish that he wouldn't even let his brother prick his finger to do any kind of blood sample work. Devereaux said that Danny's brother said that if Casolaro would have taken his own life, that would have been the least likely way he would have done it. I also read in another article that Wendy Weaver, who dated Casolaro for 7 years and at one time lived with him, agreed with Casolaro's brother. Quote, Danny hated the sight of blood. Additionally, he didn't like to be seen naked. To be found in a tub, naked, covered in blood, that's not Danny.
The opposite.
Right. So real quick, we're going to get into the bananas world of poor Danny Casolaro. All of the information comes from the Village Voice, the Washington Post, and Wikipedia. So Dan Casolaro's story began with a company called Inslaw. I know, get over it. It was before people had branding. It's called Inslaw,
Okay.
which just makes me think of coleslaw incest. It's so disgusting. So the story begins with a company called Inslaw. The founder, his name is William Hamilton. He had an allegation that the Justice Department of the United States had stolen software from him, from his company. So Casolaro began to develop this octopus conspiracy about a crime syndicate with global reach. And all of his friends and family say that he devoted most of his time and his life to this story. So I hate to say it, Inslaw's founder, William Hamilton, was in a previous position with the U.S. Justice Department, and he developed a program called PROMISE, which sounds really nice, but of course, it's the government, so it's not. PROMISE stands for Prosecutors Management Information System. So it was designed to organize paperwork generated by law enforcement and the courts, like basically a filing system. After he left the Justice Department, Hamilton alleged that the government had stolen PROMISE and distributed it, quote, illegally. But the Justice Department, and this is like an NDA kind of thing, they said that since he worked for them while he built it, they owned it, which is, if you work in tech, what they do to you all the time. So a conspiracy theory developed around the case with allegations that, quote, backdoors had been inserted into the software so that whomever the Justice Department had sold it to could be spied upon. So basically, if you were a country or a political organization and you bought the software, the U.S. could see all of the documents that you were storing in there, which is obviously not the best. So the main person who came forward with this conspiracy theory was a man named Michael Ricconsudio, who was described as a, quote, rogue scientist, weapons designer, platinum miner, alleged crystal meth manufacturer.
Oh my God.
Wow. That is a full resume.
What a res.
I mean, it truly is. Shoot for the stars.
Love that.
You can do anything.
So Michael Ricconsudio told William Hamilton, again, the founder of Inslaw, that he and a man named Earl Bryan, who was a director of Hadron Incorporated, which was a government consulting firm, had paid $40 million to Iranian officials in 1980 to persuade them not to release the American hostages before the conclusion of the presidential election that got Ronald Reagan elected president of the United States. In addition to the October surprise allegation, Rick Insudio also claimed that he had modified INSLAW's software at the Justice Department's behest. I know, INSLAW. Say it again. For the people in the back, INSLAW. Why'd you name it that? I don't fucking know. It's not even an acronym. It doesn't make any sense. So he said that the Justice Department asked him to build this backdoor into the Promise software that was created by INSLAW.
Okay.
Listen to this. And I mean, this is all probably, I don't even know if it's fake. I'm so broken right now, it doesn't even matter. But get this. These backdoor code modifications allegedly took place at the Cabazon Indian Reservation near Encino, California, because the reservation was sovereign territory.
Oh, wow.
Where enforcement of U.S. law was sometimes, quote, problematic.
That's interesting.
So he further claimed that he also worked on weapons programs and yada, yada, yada. On March 29th, 1991, 8 days after submitting the affidavit to INSLAW while they were suing the U.S. Justice Department, Insudio was arrested for distributing methamphetamine and methadone. Charges that he said were a setup to keep him from telling his story.
Okay.
All right, we're coming back. We're sort of coming back to the segment now. In the summer of 1990, Dan Casolaro arranged to meet William Hamilton, expressing an interest in pursuing the INSLAW story. Hamilton gave Casolaro a 12-page memo Rick Insudio had written detailing his allegations. On August 5th, 1991, Casolaro called Bill McCoy, a retired CID officer, to tell him that Time magazine had assigned him an article about the octopus theory. Or I think it's called Project Octopus. On August 6th, 1991, a neighbor of Casolaro's and a longtime housekeeper, Olga, helped Casolaro pack a black leather tote. She remembers him packing a thick sheaf of papers into a dark brown or black briefcase. Casolaro said he was leaving for several days to go to Martinsburg, West Virginia, to meet a source who promised to provide an important missing piece to his story. This was the last time Olga saw him. Olga told the Village Voice that she answered several threatening telephone calls at Casolaro's home that day. She said that one man called at about 9 a.m. and said, quote, "I will cut his body and throw it to the sharks."
That's not nice.
Okay.
Don't do that.
It's a way to say it, I guess.
Less than an hour later, a different man called. Please stop.
Was he like, I too will cut his body and...
No, it was even worse. He said, drop dead.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there was a third call, but Olga remembered only that no one spoke and she heard music as though the radio were playing. A fourth call was the same as the third, and a fifth call. This one was completely silent, and that came late at night. At about noon on August 10th, 1991, housekeeping staff discovered Dan Casolaro naked in the bathtub of room 517. His wrists had been slashed deeply multiple times. There were 3 or 4 wounds on his right wrist and 7 or 8 on his left. Blood was splattered on the bathroom wall and floor, and according to Ridgway, quote, "the scene was so gruesome that one of the housekeepers fainted when she saw it."
Oof.
Under Casolaro's body, paramedics found an empty Milwaukee beer can, 2 white plastic liner trash bags, and a single-edged razor blade. There was also a half-empty bottle of wine nearby. Ridgway wrote that nothing was placed in the bathtub drain to prevent debris from draining away, and none of the bathwater was saved. Other than the gruesome scene, the hotel room was clean and orderly. There was a legal pad and a pen present on the desk, and a single page had been torn from the pad, and a message written on it. To those who I love the most, please forgive me for the worst possible thing I could have done. Most of all, I'm sorry to my son. I know deep down inside that God will let me in. Dan Casolaro had changed after he got wrapped up in this octopus theory. His friend Joe Lane remembers that the last time he saw Dan Casolaro, he was more reserved than usual. He said, quote, "Joe, I'm scared." He said, "I have been getting threatening calls." Joe said, "Why don't you get off this story?" And Dan said, "I can't, Joe. It's too deep. It's bigger than anything I've ever encountered in my life." Dan said, quote, "Joe, this is bigger than anything I've ever dreamed of." But based on the note, the absence of a struggle, and no sign of forced entry, and the presence of alcohol, police judged the case a straightforward suicide. However, and I don't have any more information about this because this is Doug Johnston's case. However, later investigations showed that the FBI misled Congress about investigating Danny Casolaro's death. Members of an FBI task force looking into Casolaro's death, quote, questioned the conclusion of suicide and recommended further investigation. It's important to note because this level of doubt in a form that was signed by FBI agents is especially significant because even at that time in December of 1992, it was understood to express those kind of views where one FBI agent is calling out another FBI agent for doing a bad job. It just ended your career. So it was a huge deal that these agents testified to Congress like, no, there's something going on here. The FBI at some point claimed that all of the documents related to Casolaro's case were lost. But there are files, public information files about Casolaro that are being withheld from the public. So that shows that they lied about the files not existing.
Right.
Stack says, welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Stack says that 6 months after Danny Casolaro's death, Don Devereaux allegedly had a conversation with another journalist who said that he had a warning from a highly placed source in the CIA that Doug Johnston was a, quote, botched job, and that there were multiple contracts out on Devereaux's life. The contracts were from both CIA and organized crime connections. And Devereaux says, quote, "and that I could be in some real trouble."
Yeah, I think so.
Yikes on bikes. Okay. Stack says that later 2 more sources, one from the CIA and one from Israeli intelligence, I mean, what is that? Confirmed these death threats. So Stack asks, has Devereaux been a target for murder in the Chuck Morgan case? If so, then Doug Johnston may have been an innocent victim of a contract hit meant for Devereaux himself. And at this point, I had fully forgotten about poor Doug Johnston.
Yeah.
Like, as Kuff would say, there's a lot going on. Like, maybe because the only person talking about the death of Doug Johnston is Don Devereaux, and he only talks about himself. Don Devereaux says that Johnston's parking lot is across the street from his parking lot. He says that there's a 1-digit difference in the numbers of the addresses. He says that he's gotten mail fairly frequently from the building across the street, or for the building across the street. They both drove similar Toyotas. And Devereaux theorizes that someone was waiting for Johnston in the dark and must have known where he would be pulling in and parking. Devereaux also says that this was not just some random shooting. This was a shooting that had all the characteristics of a professional hit. Single shot, .25 caliber, back of the left ear. Quote, a very slick murder. Devereaux says that he can't be sure what happened to Johnston, but based on what he is hearing, the odds of him taking his own life are virtually non-existent. Devereaux says that if Johnston was killed with a bullet that was intended for him, he feels very terrible about it, and he feels very awful for his wife and family. Denise Johnston says that there is so much evidence that these people were after Don Devereaux instead of Doug. She says it all kind of fits together, that they were after Don, and her husband just happened to be in the wrong place. Devereaux says that he suspects that the same metric of people, mob people, intelligence community, those types of people are probably still out there. Devereaux says that he's not thrilled to know that there is a high-level CIA official who knows about this murder who is not taking action himself to correct it. Devereaux says that clearly, if there are people in the U.S. government who know and disapprove of this sort of thing, that they should, quote, damn well get off their butts and do something about it. And then Stack is back in the forest, and he says, for those unfamiliar with the details, some of Devereaux's conspiracy theories about the mob, renegade CIA agents, smuggled gold, and contract hits may seem far-fetched. But the fact remains that Devereaux has taped recordings of a number of credible sources who warned him that he is the next target. And I don't want to, surprise you guys, but there is no update. So the saddest part of this segment was no one talked about poor Doug Johnston. Mm-hmm. I cannot find anything on him. It really upset me that the only thing I found repeatedly was that one unflattering photograph that they showed over and over again, in color, in black and white, as if it's just the same photo. I was able to find 2 newspaper clippings. I just have a little bit, and that's it. So Johnston had graduated from ITT Technical Institute with honors, and 2 weeks prior landed a computer drafting job with the ICM Incorporated of Phoenix. Johnston quit his previous job as a forklift operator at a food warehouse and returned to school to, quote, get a better life for his 10-year-old daughter, Amber, and his wife, Denise. He said, quote, finally, we got our little toe out of the forest. Denise Johnston said that Doug felt that he had cheated death the year prior when he walked away unscathed from a truck rollover. Quote, he had thought, if I could come out of this alive, then nothing can hurt me. And I thought so too. And then the last saddest thing is he was wearing his 10-year-old daughter's headphones and the music was still playing and they were on his head when he was found in his car. I can't find Denise and I can't find Amber, and I cross-referenced the names and the locations, and there's just nothing there, and I am assuming that's on purpose. I do believe that Don Devereaux is still alive, and I do believe he's still kicking ass. I read an article that he wrote in 2015 about the FBI stealing money from a murdered millionaires. It was completely bananas.
Oh, wow.
And in 2015, he was 81.
Oh,
so
gosh.
I truly hope his website, he still has a website. It hasn't been updated. I hope he's still kicking rocks over and forcing shitty people into the light.
Wow.
And that is the medium story of Doug Johnston, the recap of Chuck Morgan, and the mysterious death of Danny Casolaro.
Jesus.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Sorry about that.
No.
And I had to say inslaw a lot, and I fucking hate that for me. It's like coleslaw that's going to have sex with its sister.
Oh, my God. Okay, this is a robbery segment, and it is the Rochester Car Heist. But it's not a car, it's a truck, so let's talk about it.
It's a truck heist. Get it right.
June 26, 1990, in Rochester, New York, around 6:45 a.m., Armored Motors Services of America, AMSA, sent out a truck for a scheduled delivery. There was almost $11 million in the truck.
Hello,
Which
nurse.
is wild. I guess I didn't realize they moved that much money at once, you know?
Don't you know what Alison's been talking about? She wants it. I mean, that's the thing. You are getting $11 million from point A to point B. Wouldn't you want to just take $100 here and there? They're never going to know.
I mean, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in prison, so I wouldn't. So then, we have never heard this before, but Stack says the events you're about to see are based on an official police investigation.
As if all the other ones they pulled out of their butts.
Yeah, I was like, okay. Just after 7 a.m., the armored truck stopped for an unauthorized but not uncommon stop at a convenience store. Which is funny, because apparently they did it all the time.
It's not authorized to get those Slim Jims, boys. Just
Honey.
keep going. Keep going.
They say a guard who we will call Mary Wilson went in the store, and the driver, Albert Ranieri, waited in the truck. Quote, Mary Wilson, who appears in silhouette, tells us that they stopped at the convenience store regularly. So she walks in, she says she was the only one in there, and then another lady came in behind her, and everything was just normal. Meanwhile, outside, quote, a daring assault was unfolding in full view just 100 feet away.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I mean, it's 6:45 a.m., but it must have been, spring or summer because it was very light out.
Yeah.
So they show this guy. He's running up to the armored car. And for some reason, on the passenger side door of the armored truck, there's this tiny little 4x4-inch square little door. Mm-hmm. And it's just open. And so the man just sticks the end of his rifle right in there. And he yells at the driver to put his hands on the wheel. He says, look straight ahead and we'll all get home tonight.
Ugh.
So then this second man walks up in the most horrifying mask we've seen yet.
Super, super creepy.
Scary in a different way. This one is like a gnarled old man with freaky white clown hair, like Krusty the Clown style, popping out the sides, long on the sides, bushy eyebrows, weird scraggly long beard. It's a very weird choice. So this guy somehow pulls out a set of keys and just opens the armored car right up. So he gets in the truck and comes up behind the driver, pointing his gun at him and says, don't move or I'll kill you. He tells him not to turn around. So as soon as this guy is in the truck with his gun on the driver, the other guy steps away and gets in the back. Oh, and gets back in his car. That he's got like a van over here. So 5 minutes later, Mary Wilson... It's over here.
It's over here.
It's just right there.
You can't see it. It's in my room.
It's over there. 5 minutes later, Mary Wilson leaves the store and comes back to the truck. Like, poor unsuspecting Mary's just got her Slim Jims. She's excited to have some snacks. And she returns to the truck, as they say, quote, unaware that her partner was no longer in control. So Mary gets back in, and she is trying to give her partner his sandwich. And the gremlin in the back he starts yelling at her. He says, get down. She says, it happened so fast, I didn't even get a chance to get scared.
Yeah. That was wild.
And I have experienced that feeling where you're just like, okay, just do the thing. Like, I'm out of body right now.
Yeah.
So he ties her hands and feet with zip ties. So then the gremlin yells at Ranieri and he says, when I say drive, you drive. When I say turn, you turn. And they force Albert to drive to this secluded location. It's only a mile away. Gremlin man in the truck. The other guy is following closely behind in the gray van. Captain Neil Flood of the Monroe County Sheriff's Department says, one couldn't have picked a better location. He says it was 75 to 100 yards off the road and it completely disappears from sight behind a small hill. He says they know that the site was prepared prior to the robbery. So he said there were several tree branches that had been freshly cut to make sure that the large vehicle would fit. So it was definitely like very tucked away. So we cut back to the scene inside the truck. The gremlin guy is demanding that the driver crawl through the window into the back of the truck. So, I mean, I'm guessing so he's not going outside of it at any point. He has already tied up Mary. He ties up Albert as well. And in the reenactment, he's got duct tape like fully around their head, like eyes and mouths all the way around.
I hate that.
I always think about like to take that off.
Yes, if they survive. Yep, me too.
God.
And just claustrophobic, like, ugh.
Oh, people have died that way. People have accidentally died. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
But like just the thought of ripping duct tape off of your face and then it just pulling all of your hair out after this trauma.
I know. I always think about that.
I think about that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So scary. He also weirdly makes Albert lay directly on top of Mary, even though there's plenty of room for him to not have to do that.
I hate that.
Yeah, I still have questions about that. So then they use bolt cutters to open up the back of the truck where the money is. They start taking, and I didn't even know this, but the money, when they transport it that way, is in these giant trays. Mm-hmm. So they start taking the trays out. They tell us that it is 2,000 pounds of cash.
Wow.
Once again, money is fucking heavy.
If you learn nothing from this podcast, the husband did it and the money is heavy.
Mm-hmm. FBI agent Dale Anderson tells us that one tray was full of hundreds. So, like, it's a full, like, as wide as the back of the truck.
I want that.
Full of Hundies.
Really? You wouldn't take $1? You crazy.
They're gonna know. They're gonna know. So he says there was 1 million in hundreds, almost 8 million in 20s, and the rest was a variety of other denominations. Mary and Albert, and I was like, thanks. Mary and Albert said the robbers didn't talk a lot. They moved quickly and efficiently. So it was very planned out and organized. Agent Anderson says they believe it probably took 5 to 10 minutes to move that much money, which sounds short, but really when you're thinking about pulling off a robbery, it's a long time.
Yep.
Mary says she stayed quiet until she couldn't hear voices. She says she was scared for her life and thinking of her son. She says that she thought she was going to die and she wasn't going to just sit there and wait for someone to come back and kill her. So Stack tells us it took Mary 15 painful minutes to rip through the plastic handcuffs, which I'm guessing means just fucking pulling her hand out. She wasn't breaking those.
Nope.
And I think she looks bloody in the reenactment. It was kind of quick, but she was unable to get Albert's restraints off, so she just drove the truck back to the company headquarters.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Stack says that in less than an hour, the thieves had made off with almost $11 million.
Jesus Christ.
The next day, they found the getaway van 5 miles away. The inside of the van was, quote, littered with over $13,000 in small bills. I mean, just weird. Why wouldn't it still be in the tray? It would, and it was organized. That's what I'm saying. It's so strange.
But would
that's
it
how
be
they found
because
it.
of driving erratically that it would fly
Probably.
off the
It just
tray?
flew off. Yeah. That's what I think. I think it was basically just fell out of whatever they were moving it with. And they were like, who cares about that? We've got $11 million.
Yeah. But I was also just why not take it all? You had it planned out. You had it organized. You got away with the rest of the money.
Yeah, that's true. And like we said, 5 to 10 minutes is a long time.
Yeah. So Stack also tells us that at the time, this was the largest, quote, on-the-road armored car robbery in U.S. history. Stack says everything seemed to indicate that heist was an inside job, which is definitely what I was thinking as I was watching this all go down. These guys were just so smooth and efficient. They knew what was happening. They knew about this little hole in the side of the truck.
Also, why is that hole there? It's a hole for a gun.
We'll get to it.
Or a dick.
I was like, what the fuck?
It's a glory hole.
It is truly a glory hole for the gun.
It's for the gun or the dick.
Or me to reach my little fingies in and grab a hundo.
Choose your own adventure.
The window in the back, they knew how the money was kept. They were prepared to take the money in the way that it was kept.
Right. Yeah.
I have to say, at this point, I think when it's an armored car robbery, it's always an inside job.
Maybe.
Especially at that, I don't know, in that day and age. Now we know more. We have the internet. We know how things are run, maybe with armored cars. But otherwise, nobody knew unless you worked there.
Yeah. And the biggest part that led me to believe that was the guy just having keys. Because the driver had the keys in the ignition.
Yes.
So they were not his keys.
I didn't know if he had, threatened someone else to give him those in that moment.
Yeah,
he just had those.
Rainieri is still sitting in the driver's seat. Keys in ignition. This guy comes up with his own set.
Yeah.
And the own set happens to work on any truck?
No, it's probably an inside job.
So then Stack confirms all of our thoughts. He says a conveniently broken porthole allowed one robber to hold the driver at gunpoint. So I don't know what that porthole is intended for.
But
I really
shouldn't.
don't. I should have looked it up. I'm sorry. But it was broken is why it was just open.
Okay. That's why he could stick his little dick in there.
Yes.
Yep. So this porthole allows him to get a gun on the driver, while the other one used the key to gain entry on the truck door. He says both gunmen were wearing clothing that was almost identical to the uniforms worn by company employees. And I definitely noticed that in the reenactment. I was wondering, were they trying to look like employees or were they employees? I will say, however, that the choice of mask was not the most discreet thing, like I mentioned earlier.
Draw some attention.
Lastly, Stack says that only a limited number of people knew about the enormous amount of untraceable cash being transported that day.
Also, what makes it untraceable? Everything has a serial number.
That's what I was wondering too. I was wondering, what makes it untraceable? Why was it untraceable? Why would anyone really know that information?
Right.
Like, what?
Yeah, why is it sometimes public knowledge or whatever and sometimes not? Yeah.
Sometimes they write it down and sometimes they don't. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. But I did gather that this was like a larger amount than would usually be transported at once.
Okay.
So that's why this one was the target, I think. Okay, so then we do get an update, but I'll just read you the story. So very shortly after the heist, the FBI began to suspect Albert Ranieri, the driver of the truck.
The brother of Keith Raniere. Just kidding.
You heard it here first, folks.
So he's our robbery victim, which I was like hook, line, and sinker in that reenactment.
Right.
Like, this poor guy. Oh, my God. So I got a lot of my summary of the story from an article written by Mark Hare in the Democrat and Chronicle newspaper from Rochester in 2002. So the FBI started following Ranieri because they knew that he couldn't spend any of the money without implicating himself.
Yeah.
And in fact, they were following him so closely one day that they actually rear-ended him and he stopped when he had stopped abruptly.
Oh, dummies.
Smooth moves.
You
which
always
he actually
leave
got in
6
trouble
feet.
for reckless driving. So
Oh, okay.
Ranieri and his dad actually both became suspects at one point. So I read in one source that this was because Ranieri's dad lived super close to where they parked the AMSA truck when they took the money out.
Okay.
Oh, shoot. That sucks for his dad, though. That's not cool.
Yeah, and from all accounts, it doesn't seem like his dad actually was involved. He was just a suspect for a while. In 1992, Ranieri and his dad were arrested and charged with robbery for the Rochester AMSA heist. Charges were later dropped, however, when it was realized that the informant who claimed to have seen the money was actually in jail at that time.
Ugh. It's the best alibi you could ever have.
It is. Always.
So they also, at this time, had searched Ranieri and his father's properties and did not find anything, any of the money. And in June of 1995, the statute of limitations ran out for the Rochester AMSA robbery.
Right. Why not come forward then?
Well, there's more stuff that happens. So in 2000, Ranieri and his former defense attorney, Anthony Leonardo Jr., go to a hotel to purchase some cocaine.
Okay.
As you know, as you do with your lawyer, just very normal business relationship.
Sure.
During this purchase in the hotel room, Ranieri is just like thinking he's like hot criminal shit, and he starts showing off to the other criminals by bragging about his crimes.
You can't do that, bud. You have to
We
keep
love
it
to see
cool. Play it cool.
Wow.
Ranieri starts talking about how he did this robbery and how he'd spent $600,000 on various business ventures and how he had burned $100,000 in his barbecue pit to avoid arrest.
You.
So I didn't find the detail on that, but my guess is before they came to search his property is when that happened.
That's painful. Okay.
So little does Ranieri know, this coke dealer is actually an undercover FBI informant.
Of course.
Keep your mouth shut.
And he does have video surveillance running.
Boy.
So on the surveillance video, he can be heard saying, quote, "I went out in my backyard. I had a little pit." And, quote, "I burned 100 thou easy." He can also be heard saying, quote, "Why do I care? I mean, I got $1 million.
I'm so cheap. I would not burn 100,000 even if I
could
had
not.
11 mil.
I could
mean,
not.
What a waste, am I right? It is also presumed that the 20s that he was paying with for the cocaine were from the AMSA heist. So I'm not positive why Ranieri was not arrested immediately after this. I'm guessing they just needed more or something because maybe he was being a little vague in his description. Yeah. May 5th, 2000, a 44-year-old nightclub owner, Anthony Vicaro, was shot and killed while driving home one day. So this will come to play later. I'm telling you for a reason. A few months after this, Ranieri and Leonardo, his coke lawyer, are finally arrested and charged with conspiracy to distribute cocaine. Leonardo eventually pleads guilty to drug charges and conspiracy to commit murder charges and tells authorities that he and Ranieri had plotted to kill Anthony Vicaro, the nightclub owner I mentioned a second ago. In December of 2002, Ranieri also confesses to the AMSA robbery and the murder of Anthony Vicaro.
Wow.
So it was really this Vicaro murder that made them able to arrest and charge these guys because the statute of limitations had run out on the robbery. So I'm just going to go back a little bit and tell you some of the details of what was going on. So in the AMSA robbery, I'm still a little unclear on Ranieri's level of involvement. I saw it mentioned that he may have been paid to pull the car over in a specific place so that the robbers could do the heist.
Right.
But to me, with the amount of money that he had, I think he was more involved than just that.
Right.
So I think he was part of, like, the planning and everything.
Yes. And the keys and all of that.
Yeah, come on.
Ranieri admitted as part of his plea agreement that he had laundered some of the money by making drug purchases. He bought stocks and invested in businesses, including a limousine service and a communications company.
Okay.
He also said that at one point he paid a man $10,000 to apply for a job with AMSA because he was planning to do the exact same heist again. But this plan was unsuccessful. So I don't know if the guy backed out or what happened. But so how did all of this jump to Ranieri killing Anthony Vicaro? So Vicaro owned a nightclub called Club Titanic with Leonardo, the former lawyer, coke-buying, murdering buddy. Ranieri at one point invested $100,000 in the club. Over time, Leonardo convinces Ranieri that Vicaro is stealing from him, which in Mark Hare's article, he was super funny. He said that Ranieri had himself stolen the money in question before he gave it to Vicaro, didn't factor into his thinking, I guess.
I stole this fair and square. You don't get to steal it from me.
Yeah.
So Ranieri and Leonardo plot to kill Vicaro. On May 5th, 2000, as Vicaro was driving home, Ranieri ambushed him with a gun and fired 17 shots, hitting Vicaro 8 times and killing him. And I mean, not discreet in any way. This guy was driving home. If you're going to do a murder, what are you doing? According to fandom.com, it's also believed that Ranieri and Leonardo were using the nightclub to launder more of the money.
Yeah.
So,
obviously.
Club Titanic.
Totally.
So both Leonardo and Ranieri confess as part of their plea deals. Albert pleads guilty to murder and to federal racketeering conspiracy in relation to the AMSA robbery. He is sentenced to 30 years and also given a $250,000 fine, which I didn't know that was a thing.
They're like, you stole that money, you paid some back.
I guess. At this time, some of the stolen money had still not been located, and Ranieri did not implicate anyone else in the crime. Quote, he was one of a number of people involved in the robbery. I don't believe he has all the money, said prosecutor Carl Widdish. Yeah. Leonardo was released on parole in 2013. In May of 2020, Ranieri sought an early release from prison 6 years before his sentence would be up. So he had asked for a hardship release because of COVID, and quote, and he said also the tremendous stress of worrying about his ailing mother. He suggested that he serve out the remainder of his sentence through 2026 in confinement in his mother's home so that he could take care of her. Which, I mean, if you're going to make a request, that's a decent one. He also said that he was being in quarantine in the prison because he had had cancer in the past, so he was more at risk. But Ranieri was denied his request and will not be eligible for release until 2027. As of the latest update on fandom.com, I read that Ranieri has still never named anyone else in the robbery. Only $87,000 of the $11 million has ever been recovered.
Where is it?
I feel like he spent it on all his weird endeavors.
Maybe. He did go very big. And I love that he was like, what's the best way to invest? Where no one will pay attention. Nightclubs and cocaine.
Yeah, totally.
Cocaine.
Yep, so that's it.
Wow.
Oi. Oi. Okay. Listeners, come back next week for the final episode of this podcast. For now. Probably forever. But someone has hinted at future projects, so you never know.
Hey, let your light shine bright.
Yeah, baby. Okay, so when you come back, I will be covering A Lost Loves about Robert Brown.
And I will close out this podcast with the child murder of Chaim Weiss. Thank you.
And I'm just going to listen.
Okay, we love you.
We love you so.
We do love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh no. What is he called? Oh no.
He's not called anything. He calls and says what?
Oh.
I feel like I'm going insane, actually.
She's been up since 4 a.m.
Okay.
Oh.
You shut up. Okay.
I'm ready.
Less than an hour later, a different man called and said,
Oh no.
Please stop.
Was he like, I too will cut his body and...
No, it was even worse. He
Okay.
said, drop dead.
Oh, okay. He's like, let's tighten it up.
Rough. Okay.
He's like, you know what? I talked a little too much last time. I just
Drop dead, 2 words.
I don't even have to take it to the sharks.
No.
Just drop
And
dead.
I don't have to
Just
cut
drop dead.
anybody.
I'm in tears right now. Okay.
Drop dead.
There was a third call.
Oh,
God.
no.
I can't keep sounding like I'm laughing through this. Like
I know.
Some people are dead. Okay. Because they were told to drop dead.
You are doing the Bradley Cooper thing. That's the video I wanted to show you when he is on Jimmy Fallon. He's talking about Elephant Man and how he's acting as Elephant Man. And he can't stop laughing. And they're like, this is not funny. This guy was so deformed.
Honey, remember when we were spreading my grandma's ashes in her yard and I fucking cracked up?
Yeah.
I lost my mind.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Okay.